Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week, along with special guest Mrs. Force Ghost Conversations herself, Elise King, we're going to take a deep dive look into the Season 2 episode of The Bad Batch titled Retrieval. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter and Hive at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations, and we look forward to connecting with you on those platforms. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. Plus, Force Ghost Conversations is live on Patreon, and if you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Finally, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. And man, are we really an exciting time for Star Wars right now with Bad Batch going on, Celebration just around the corner, and of course, this coming Wednesday, Season 3 of The Mandalorian will drop on Disney Plus. At least the first episode will drop on the streaming platform. So very exciting stuff coming up here. We also have some wonderful content coming forth on Force Ghost Conversations itself. So again, we'll be going back to a multi-episode a week release strategy. So it's very exciting. So get ready for all that as we break down all the new Star Wars stuff that is coming out to us very soon. But before we get into our discussion on the new Bad Batch episode that released this week, Retrieval, let's run through some of the news that took place in the Star Wars Lucasfilm galaxy this week in our Cloud City Gossip segment. So first, Star Wars Celebration is fast approaching in London this April. However, Star Wars announced that the next celebration will not be until 2025. Details have not been shared yet as to where the convention will take place, but you can probably be sure that your Force Ghost Conversations friends will be there in some capacity. Next, a comic adaptation of Season 2 of The Mandalorian will be coming soon from Marvel. The 8-issue series will cover each episode from the incredible season, and the creative team of writer Rodney Barnes and artist Georges Jeanty are returning for the series, who also, I believe, did the first season adaptation. While Jeanty will kick off The Mandalorian Season 2 with art for Issue 1, he'll also be joined by artist Stephen Cummings, who will be penciling every other issue. Now, no release date is available yet, but we will certainly be covering this item in more detail as more details are announced. Speaking of comics, Marvel announced this week that a crossover event will come out this summer, and it will feature a story crossing all major titles, including the main Star Wars line, Dr. Aphra, Darth Vader, and Bounty Hunters. More news to come soon. Finally, another wave of guests have been announced for Star Wars Celebration. These include Warwick Davis, Annabelle Davis, Harrison Davis, Denise Goff, and Samantha Aline. And they've all been excited, or I'm at least excited to see them at the convention. And I hope that you are, if you're able to attend. And if you've got tickets, be sure to check out how to get photo ops and autographs now at StarWarsCelebration.com. I assure you that those will fill up quite fast, so you don't want to miss out on all of that. And then on the other side of this very short break here, we'll be back with our analysis, discussion, rhetoric, etc. on the latest Bad Batch episode, Retrieval. We'll be right back, folks. Okay, everyone, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations, and it's a Bad Batch discussion week here on the podcast, and when you hear that phrase, you know who's going to be on the pod with us. It, of course, is special guest, returning guest, continuing guest, Mrs. Force Ghost Conversations, Elise King. Elise, How are you today?
I'm good.
You
You
are
gave
feeling
me your
much better.
cold,
Yes, I did give so yep.
but I'm on the mend. Bad Batch helped, lifted the spirits.
You've got tea, Bad Batch helped. Yep, first cough of the episode.
Yeah,
We're
sorry,
we're gonna
audience.
make it through, everybody. Apologies for any coughs.
In this household, if one of us gets sick,
Yep,
it's a
everybody's
week
getting
of
sick.
sick. Yeah,
Fortunately, it doesn't happen too often, but
yeah.
we persevere nonetheless. Well, Elise, thanks again for braving the illness and for coming on to the podcast. I know our guests, not our guests, but our listeners are thrilled to have you back on to talk this. I would say just a fine episode.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was. It didn't need to be amazing. It didn't need to be anything. I think just in the greater pantheon of Bad Batch episodes, where I just say, yeah, it was a good one. And
Yeah,
then
it was a lesson learned for Omega.
definitely a lesson learned for Omega. Um, but really, I wanted to start. Of course, this is a spoiler discussion for those of you at home. If you haven't watched the
Get out of
episode
here.
yet, pause this episode now. Go watch it on Disney Plus, and then come right back to this moment because I can't do anything for you at this point. But this is really a two-part episode that they decided to release week to week here. Do you think it would have been better to have both episodes released last week rather than just the one and this week? Because they've done it recently. I mean, the first two episodes were done together. The mid season, whatever they want to call it, spectacular was two episodes back to back. Why couldn't this one have been the same?
I mean, the only thing I can think of is like the emotional beats of the story were different than those other arcs. Like
Mm-hmm.
the biggest emotional beats came in the second part, whereas this was like all the emotion happened last episode. And I think maybe the showrunners, one, it might have just been a pacing thing or like an episode thing. We needed this to go this many weeks, but like from a story perspective, I think it was kind of nice to let us sit with all the emotions that were experienced
Mm-hmm.
and processed in the last episode, because you don't really like this episode is an adventure one. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of emotional beats. So I think it was nice to kind of sit with it, and then you
Mm-hmm.
come back and like the team's working together again. Like
Yeah.
the cogs have been fixed in the machine, so to speak.
Right. For my 2 cents, I would definitely side with the idea that it was story wise a reason why they did that. They
Yeah.
wanted the audience to sit with the emotional weight of them processing the loss of Echo.
Mhm.
Because to the contrary, like they didn't just want to extend the weeks that they have this show going on because it's going to overlap with the Mandalorian next week.
That's true. There's an
So
argument to push them together for that reason.
yeah, I mean, do
Is
they really
Mando
want?
really next week?
It's really Wednesday. Yeah,
Oh my god.
yeah.
I wasn't audience. I haven't been watching trailers or anything because I
You've only seen the one that you're forced to see at
yeah,
Celebration.
I haven't seen anything beyond that because I wanted to be completely surprised and no expectation. So I'm really out of the loop on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wednesday.
Wow, that's wild.
That is, it's fast approaching, and yeah, they're gonna overlap for like I think all of March pretty much to get to the end of the
Yeah,
season,
you're
and
right.
I'm glad that selfishly, I'm glad that the new video game Survivor is also because that was supposed to come out in
Oh
March
yeah,
too.
Star Wars fans weren't going to have any time on their
Nope,
hands.
nope. So that was pushed off to May or April, May. I don't know off the top of my head. I know it's one of those 2 months, but still, Celebration just around the corner. It's we're ramping up.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Back to the point. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to push them together, but yeah, I think story wise, it was a big episode last week. Like they
Yeah.
really let the weight of Echo leaving sit there. So I'm glad for it.
And very much as we talked in our episode last week, not a very action heavy adventure episode, more of an emotionally driven episode for sure.
Yeah.
This one the opposite, more of
Yeah.
a we have a mission at hand, we have to complete it. We need it in order to get to our next adventures.
Another I think both of us were like, "Oh, this is very like Solo
Yeah.
driven, like the movie Solo." I got a lot of vibes from the first part of that film with this episode of like there's an older person, like a slumlord,
Yep.
taking advantage of children to make a profit, and
living in like this underground area too.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, how interesting. It's a
Yeah.
very similar vibe.
I think the characters that is running this thing is called Moko.
Yeah. Gosh,
and
eating him eat was disgusting.
right,
I
like
felt
let them eat cake, right?
I literally felt sick to my stomach watching a cartoon eat.
While everyone else is starving, and then they're fighting over a bit of soup.
I mean, yeah, the whole premise behind it is disgusting, but just the physical act of him eating, I was like, ew.
They spend a good minute on that,
of him just eating that soup, and I'm just like,
some soup, some sausage, all the stuff, and he's exploiting these kids down here for their labors and efforts while he's reaping all the rewards.
I mean, Lord of the Rings.
What did you make? Yeah, what did you make of like this like system that he has in place here? It's very much a smuggler discoverer system, very similar to Lady Proxima's endeavor that you mentioned in Solo. Kind of similar as well to what we see on Jakku with Unkar Plot in The Force Awakens and Rey.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Where he steals the Marauder and he's like, "Does that put me in line for being top earner this month or this week?"
Yeah.
Nope, it doesn't, because I'm seedy.
I mean, it's a familiar tale, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Omega learns this lesson at the end of the episode, but like the world's not bad just because the Empire's there.
Right.
It's because people choose to be bad.
People choose to be bad.
And there's always a power grab. So yeah, I mean it was a familiar tale. It wasn't a shocking one to see. It was just a different version of the same story.
But what I liked about this episode from the perspective of trying to continue some of the emotional weight from the last episode is we really get a sense of Omega's kindness and empathy in this, because she could choose the path of being mean or cruel or malice towards Benny, the person that stole their ship and gave them this hardship and trouble over the last episode. But instead she gives him a ration. She is empathetic to him. She listens to him. She doesn't assume malintent when they're working with him until he chooses to turn them in and to share their plot. But she isn't like, "How dare you, Benny?" She's just like, "I understand," in a way.
I mean, yeah, it's consistent with her character. She's been the protector for Gunji, for her own Bad Batch. Even Crosshair at some point she extended that olive branch, so it's consistent with her. I got a very like all the boys together. I got a very Lost Boys and Wendy vibe from it. Of like Wendy comes in and shows that there's a different way of living, and the Lost Boys are like, and Peter Pan are like, what?
Yeah,
I definitely got like that kind of story vibe as well.
Yeah. So over the course of like the season, the long-term arc of all this, do you like think that this mission will add like some depth, some gravity, some gravitas to the like? In my mind, every episode, or at least some semblance of each episode to this point, is like pushing them to join like a greater cause. Like they're seeing the problems in society. They're seeing the problems in the Empire world. They're seeing both the Empire effects and also the underworld seedy nature of it all too. Do you think this is just going to keep pushing them towards an eventual end of season, them making the choice to do these like self-help missions rather than helping Sid for her monetary gain?
I don't know if it pushes towards that. I don't know. I didn't see it that deep. I remember I just turned to you at the end of the episode and was like, another person owes them a favor. Another person they can call in. And wouldn't it be nice to know the person who mines Ipsium, a highly explosive material? I don't see it so deep as like, oh, this is what's going to push them. I think...
Right. I don't think it will either. I just think it's like another...
I think it's another
tick towards that eventual, time where they do decide that.
I think more and more I'm like, it's going to like... For Hunter to turn away from this path of protection, it's going to take something really personal for it to hit home that they need to be involved in the fight, I think.
Maybe it does. Maybe Omega gets like captured or something like that. Then they have to, like you said, call in all these favors.
Yeah.
Sid, the guy from the first 2 episodes that they helped out.
Or one of them, gets
one of the racers, right? From the Riot
Yeah.
Racer. Like all this people say it's filler episodes, but in reality,
they're building a network of contacts.
Mhm.
That's what I see as the overall point of all these quote unquote like adventure one-off things.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious to see how it pays out in the last. I think the last 4 episodes will be probably pretty heavy,
I'd imagine so.
or at
Yeah.
least the last 3. But I mean, that's why I'm just like, oh, another coin in the pocket, another contact in the phone book or whatever.
Mhm.
I think also we saw a little bit of emotional growth from Tech this episode, like when Omega was like, oh wow, it's not just the Empire that makes the world bad or makes people do bad things. I think before Tech would have been like, yep, that's how the world can work.
Mhm.
And then he like took a beat and then was like, but there's us too. That balances it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think he took the time to understand that she was saying that not just because she was observing it, because she was feeling something, and he addressed those feelings in his very own Tech way. And I was like, oh, the Bad Batch is functioning correctly again. They're not even arguing anymore.
Yes. I also liked in the beginning of the episode when she was like, here is my, or when she was like, why don't we track Gonki?
Yeah.
Like that was something that no one else thought of, but
I was surprised. I think they discounted him,
They did.
and that's why they forgot about him.
They did. Even though I think I joked in the moment, I was like, well, they just find him in a fielder because they tossed him out.
Yeah, not great.
Not great, but it worked out for them, and it's kind of that outside the box thinking that Omega brings sometimes, where that's what she brings to the team is.
And she's a great
A
strategist.
different perspective and a great strategist.
She's
exactly.
still a clone. She's still a clone that was made for battle.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing it in her own way.
But she's uniquely Omega in that front.
I'm feeling a little greedy because I love the comedic bits that Wrecker brings, but I want another emotional beat from him. Like we had one with Omega last season, and it's been a while since that. And I'm like, okay, I got my Tech moment. I've had Hunter moments. I want a Wrecker moment again. I'm now just like, they showrunners give me what I want, and I want more. I want more.
What if it's next week and you get it and you're like, I knew it. I called it.
Just bring me on the show. Toss my hair back.
Well, we will have you on the show, and it's not a visual podcast. So metaphorically, you can say, I'm tossing my hair back. Well, really the last question that I had here for this episode was just like, I think we talked about this a little bit too, but I think at the end of the episode, I'm really intrigued with like this potential power vacuum that could happen for this group. Like, of course, I'm taking the cynical route.
Yeah.
The episode very much leaves them with being like a very socialist, everybody gets their share kind of feel about it. But maybe it doesn't come to pass over the next couple of weeks,
Why
right?
do you want it to descend
I don't
into
want it to
mayhem
do
and
that.
chaos?
I just know human nature. What do you think really occurs for this group in Moko's absence? Do you think they continue down this path? Do they work together and build each other up, or do they eventually appoint someone to be another Moko? Just they trust him to not be so seedy.
I mean, I think for a while they thrive. I think for a while they thrive. They work together.
Mhm.
They're just so happy to have food in their bellies. But like years down the line, a system is rigged up, right? Like no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And there's always one person or a couple of people that usually have a stronger voice than others in the room, because you have to break stalemates. You have to, come to a decision. And there's usually people who are natural, more like decision makers over others. So I think for a while they're good. But I think
But they might not be.
But I think there's always someone who's going to come in and try to shake things up, or someone who wants to take more than what they were assigned.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's just the way of things. But
what if the Empire starts coming in? Like they find out about the Ipsium somehow.
That's a good idea. I mean, you would think with such a highly explosive material, the Empire would already be there.
Yeah, a raw material that could easily be mined.
It would be interesting to learn who they're mining for.
Yeah, who's the contact?
Yeah, who's the person who's buying it?
Is it Crimson Dawn?
Ooh.
Is this how we bring Maul back?
Is this the story?
Is that actually what Bad Batch is about? Is bringing Maul
back? Oh my gosh. Ellie would love it. Ellie would lose her mind.
My gosh, that would be great.
That's my sister.
Yes.
Just she's obsessed with Maul. It's her favorite character. He's her favorite character.
I like that. That's an interesting theory.
I mean,
because they're really playing with underworld stuff in this season so far. Like they've dipped their toes in both the Empire and the underworld stuff, and maybe Sid.
When does Crimson Dawn come into play? I wonder.
They're still around. They're around now.
They're around now.
Yeah, this is before Solo,
Yeah,
and Maul after Mandalore already was doing his underworld game. So
if they have contact with Maul, that'd be freaking awesome.
Maybe Sid's never said who her clients are, right?
Yeah.
Like they're always very much you do the job, you get the money, and then I give the money. Or I give the money, I buy stuff, right? This is how we operate here. And maybe Maul is at the end of the tunnel there. Maybe they're secretly funding Crimson Dawn operations or supporting it in some way.
That'd be fascinating.
It'd be dark, and it keeps the series going in a unique direction that I wasn't expecting.
Bad Batch to link underworld contacts together, one, we're brilliant.
Yeah.
And two, how cool.
That would be very cool.
I don't know. That's just like totally up in the air, but it's a fun thought experiment.
We're speculating. It's all fun.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to note about the episode before we got out of here?
I had another week where I didn't have fun stuff because I couldn't take notes of how I was feeling this week.
Yes, very understandable. Very understandable.
But I have to say, what was the thief's name?
Benny.
Yeah. Benny and Omega were cute together.
Are you shipping?
I don't want to ship Omega with anyone, but anytime I don't know, I was just like, oh, when she points the arrow at him, I was like, I've read too many books like this. I know.
Enemies to lovers. Yes. The classic trope.
She's like 12. It doesn't matter. But that's my only fun.
I think she's 15.
You think she's 15 now?
I think she's 15, yes.
How do you know that? Why do you think that?
So, Attack of the Clones is 10 years before... so the Clone Order is placed at the end of Phantom Menace.
Okay.
And it's 10 years to the Attack of the Clones, and she's part of the original clone batch, but she's not...
But she's not aging at the same rate.
But she's just aging as a normal person.
Yeah, so she's 10.
So that's 10. End of Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars is 13.
13, and it's been 2 years?
And then I'm assuming it's been about 2 years.
Okay.
So I think 15. So,
All right, well, I feel better about my
YA
shipping the two of them.
Yeah, coming of age story.
I do think it's worth noting, though, that the Bad Batch would not have these contacts if Omega wasn't there to build bridges.
Absolutely. She's definitely the communicator, the empath of the group in a way that the others can't be.
Yeah. So, give me more moments. I think we're gonna see Crosshair soon. We haven't seen him in a long time. It's been
like 8 episodes that we haven't seen him. So
can't wait.
Him and the Rampart fallout. I need some juicy details on that one.
You want more of the political side of things?
Well, I just need to know because there has to be some fallout on all that. So
the prequel boy in you just giggles every time you see the Senate and the halls of Coruscant.
That's right.
You're just like, ooh, the Senate.
Down to a T. That's exactly what I do. The two things that I wanted to note that are kind of fun, just out there kind of the thoughts are at the beginning of the episode when Wrecker is like, I'm hungry. And then they're like, you shouldn't have eaten your rations. I'm like, but I was hungry.
I will say for Wrecker's defense, he is huge. To have all that strength, you need to constantly fuel it. I could see him being a Michael Phelps 600K.
What if he gets more rations than everybody else and he just ate it all?
I get it.
I
get it,
We can't.
Not all of us function the same way.
Some days you're hungrier.
Yes, exactly.
Just thought it was funny. And I know we had to look at each other when that was good.
You looked at me with some side eye. I was side eye audience. It was not fair.
It wasn't, no. And then the other thing I want to note is the bridge sequence at the end looked very much like Temple of Doom, and I was kind of expecting it to be a Temple of Doom sequence the entire time where Indy breaks the rope and sends everybody out. And
I forgot, we both turned to each other in that scene, and when Omega just falls.
Oh, she
I was like,
graceful.
they're back together again. That was ultimate trust. She had
Mhm.
100% faith that Hunter
Yeah,
was
there
going to
was there
catch
was
her.
no lack of faith at all in that.
I think I turned to you and I said something. I was like, Hunter just keeps getting better, doesn't he?
Yep. Yep. It was a majestic
I,
sequence. I'll get at that.
I was like, wow, Hunter. Wow.
Wow,
That's all I'll
indeed.
say. It's a cartoon, it's a kid's show.
Exactly. Well, I think we've talked through everything that we can possibly milk out of this episode, Elise.
Yeah, I think so. It
I
was a
think
good
so. It
one.
was a good episode, and we'll see how it all plays into
On your birthday.
the grand scheme of things next week. Yes, it's
It's a Star Wars
it's
birthday.
well,
Mando, Bad
Mando and Bad
Batch.
Batch on the same day. What more could I want?
Yeah.
Well, I got presents too, so that's
Yeah,
great.
you get presents.
And then of course we'll be back next Sunday with a brand new episode talking all about the Bad Batch, and then of course to our listeners at home, we're going to a two episode a week format again with the Mando happening at the same time. This is wild.
Yeah,
Yeah,
busy March.
busy bees indeed. Well, Elise, thanks again for coming on the show. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode talking about the new episode of The Bad Batch and all the goodness that will come with it. And thanks to you at home for listening. You know where to follow us on all the social media channels: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Hive, TikTok, YouTube. We're all there all the time. So be sure to hit us up so that we can continue the conversations on those platforms. If you're loving the podcast, be sure to leave a rating, a review, subscribe on your favorite podcast site of choice. Tell your friends about us too, because that really helps to grow the show and could create a grand audience that is the Force Ghost Conversations community. Also, if you feel so inclined and you want to support the show through other means, we have a Patreon live now. So if you go into the episode description of this podcast itself, you will be able to find a link to our Patreon site where you can find the various tiers that we have offered. And for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to a whole slew of Force Ghost Conversations goodies.
Come talk to us.
Yeah, come talk to us and let's have fun with all that. Also, if you want to wear a Star Wars Force Ghost Conversations inspired t-shirt, be sure to check out our TeePublic store. They're running sales all the time. And if you want to wear our merchandise for Star Wars Celebration coming up soon, now's the time to put in your orders. So get ready for all of that. And in the meantime, folks, may the Force be with you. Take care. We'll see you soon.